The Chicago wind howled outside my kitchen window, a stark contrast to the sunny picture Jessica waved in front of me. December 28th. "Look, Mom," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We're all going to the Bahamas for New Year's. Isn't that wonderful?" I managed a weak smile, already sensing the blow. "It sounds lovely, dear," I replied, my gaze fixed on the sparkling turquoise water in the photo. "I'm so sorry, but there's just not enough space on the yacht," Jessica chirped, her smile widening. "It's really more for younger people anyway." My heart sank. This wasn't just a vacation. It was a deliberate exclusion. My own son, Peter, stood silently beside her, his eyes avoiding mine. "Oh, I understand," I said quietly, trying to mask the sting of rejection. "You all have fun." I turned back to the counter, busying myself with the half-chopped vegetables for the soup I was making. The image of them all, tanned and laughing on a luxurious yacht, seared itself into my mind. Julian, Jessica's fiancé, flashed his usual charming smile in the photo. I wondered how much of this exclusion was his idea. He'd never made a secret of his desire for Peter to distance himself from me. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll bring you back a T-shirt," Jessica said, her tone condescending. I could feel the tears pricking my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "That's very thoughtful of you, dear," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. They didn't stay long after that. I listened to the sound of their car pulling away, the silence in the house amplifying my loneliness. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table, the untouched soup growing cold beside me. This wasn't just about a missed vacation. It was about being erased. My husband, Charles, had passed away a year ago, and since then, my place in the family had steadily diminished. I was the widow, the aging mother, the unwanted guest. A wave of grief washed over me, not just for Charles, but for the life we had built together. We'd worked hard, saved diligently, and invested wisely. Charles had always been shrewd with his finances, tucking away money in places I wasn't even aware of. He'd often hinted at a nest egg for a rainy day, something beyond our regular accounts. He'd told me, "Margaret, there's more to our finances than meets the eye. Don't ever let anyone underestimate you." His words echoed in my ears now, the sudden spark of resolve igniting within me. I wouldn't be underestimated. I wouldn't be erased. I would find this hidden nest egg, not for myself, but to remind them of my worth. I spent the next few days combing through Charles's study, a room I'd barely entered since his passing. Every drawer, every file, every book became a potential hiding place. Then, tucked away in a dusty box at the back of a closet, I found it. Not a single account, but a series of documents, meticulously organized, detailing investments, properties, and offshore accounts I'd never known existed. There, amongst the papers, was the key a controlling interest in a small tech startup called Innovate Design. The name rang a bell. Wasn't that Jessica's company? The one she'd been so excitedly talking about. The one Julian was supposedly helping to manage. My heart pounded in my chest. This was more than just a nest egg. This was a lifeline, a weapon. A slow smile spread across my face. The Bahamas trip suddenly seemed very small, very insignificant. I had something much bigger in mind. They thought they could exclude me, dismiss me, erase me. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The game, as they say, was about to change. Rain lashed against the study window, mirroring the tempest in my heart. December 28th. Just 2 days ago, Jessica had posted that dazzling family photo from the Bahamas, everyone beaming, cocktails in hand, not a care in the world. Everyone except me. You wouldn't enjoy it, Mom, Jessica had said with a saccharine smile. It's really more of a couple's trip. A couple's trip that included my grandson, but not his grandmother. I swirled the brandy in my glass, the amber liquid reflecting the flickering firelight. It was late, the house silent except for the rhythmic tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the hall. I felt a familiar pang of loneliness, a hollow ache that had settled in my chest since Richard, my husband, passed away. He'd know what to do, I whispered to the empty room, my voice barely a breath. Richard always had a knack for finding solutions, for seeing the path forward when I was lost in the fog. Driven by a sudden impulse, I went to his desk, a massive oak piece he'd inherited from his father. I hadn't touched it much since his death. Each object, his pen set, his leather-bound journal, his favorite pipe, a sharp reminder of his absence. Just looking, I murmured, running a hand over the smooth, polished surface. I opened a drawer, expecting to find the usual assortment of papers and trinkets. Instead, I found a small locked box tucked away in the back. I frowned. I don't remember this, I said aloud, turning it over in my hands. The lock was old-fashioned, a simple keyhole. On a whim, I tried the key to the antique desk itself. To my surprise, it fit. With a soft click, the box sprung open. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a key, a flash drive, and a folded piece of paper. My heart began to pound. I recognized Richard's handwriting instantly. My dearest Margaret, the letter began, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and something has led you to seek this out. My eyes blurred with tears. I took a deep breath and continued reading. He'd written about a hidden account, a safety net he'd built over the years, separate from our regular finances. A rainy day fund, he'd called it, for when the storms of life hit hard. The storm had certainly hit. Not only had I lost Richard, but I was now treated as an inconvenient afterthought by my own family. The Bahamas trip was just the latest slight. There had been birthdays missed, holidays spent alone, phone calls unanswered. They think I'm old, irrelevant, I said, my voice shaking with anger. The letter continued, explaining the contents of the flash drive, detailed financial records, account numbers, passwords. He'd also included instructions on accessing the safety deposit box where the key unlocked a further trove of documents. I inserted the flash drive into my laptop and clicked on the first file. A spreadsheet opened, revealing a dizzying array of numbers. Stocks, bonds, real estate holdings, even an offshore account I knew nothing about. Richard, I whispered, stunned by the sheer amount. It was far more than I'd ever imagined. He'd clearly been incredibly successful in his investments, something he'd always downplayed during his life. He'd wanted to provide for me, protect me, even after he was gone. And now this secret fortune offered me a chance, not just to secure my own future, but perhaps something more. A slow smile spread across my face. The hurt, the loneliness, The sting of Jessica's exclusion, it all began to recede, replaced by a new feeling, a quiet resolve. The rain outside intensified, but the storm within me was beginning to calm. Richard's words echoed in my mind. Use it wisely, my love, for yourself, for your future. He'd given me a gift, a weapon, a shield, and I intended to use it. I scrolled through the files, my eyes scanning the names of companies, the values of assets. One name in particular caught my eye. Assessa Wellness, I read aloud. Wasn't that Jessica's company, the organic skincare line she'd been so proud of launching? I navigated to the next file, a detailed breakdown of Richard's investment portfolio. There, nestled amongst the various holdings, was a significant stake in Assessa Wellness. A very significant stake. My word, I breathed, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The percentage was staggering. It couldn't be right. I double-checked the figures, then triple-checked. There was no mistake. Richard, unbeknownst to me, and certainly unbeknownst to Jessica, owned a controlling interest in her company. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. The power, the leverage, the possibilities. Jessica had excluded me, dismissed me, treated me as a burden. She'd flaunted her wealth, her success, her perfect little family in my face. She had no idea what I now held in my hands. I closed my laptop, the screen reflecting my own image back at me. Gone was the heartbroken widow, the forgotten grandmother. In her place was a woman with a plan, a woman with the resources and the resolve to rewrite her story. The Bahamas looked beautiful in Jessica's photos. The turquoise water, the white sand beaches, the radiant sunshine. Perhaps, I thought, a New Year's trip might be in order. After all, what better way to celebrate a new beginning than with a little sunshine and a change of management? The chill December air seeped through the drafty window panes of my living room. It was the 29th, just 2 days shy of New Year's, and the house felt emptier than usual. I picked up the photograph Jessica had so thoughtlessly left on the mantelpiece, a vibrant splash of turquoise water and blindingly white sand, the Bahamas. Jessica, Julian, and seemingly half the town were beaming from the deck of what I recognized as a rather expensive yacht. Must be nice, I muttered to myself, a bitter taste rising in my throat. It wasn't the vacation itself, not really. It was the blatant exclusion, the casual disregard. They hadn't even bothered to mention they were going, let alone invite me. My own son, too wrapped up in his new family, hadn't given a second thought to his mother spending the holidays alone. I traced the outlines of their smiling faces, each one a tiny stab to my heart. Jessica, radiant in a designer swimsuit, her arm draped possessively over Julian. He looked tanned and relaxed, a far cry from the stressed-out young man I'd welcomed into our family. My gaze lingered on their intertwined hands, flashing rings catching the sunlight. They'd gotten engaged, hadn't they? Another detail conveniently omitted from their conversations with me. Such a happy family, I whispered, the words laced with irony. A happy family that I was no longer a part of. Setting the photograph down, I wandered into the kitchen, the silence of the house pressing down on me. I poured myself a cup of lukewarm coffee, the stale taste mirroring the emptiness in my stomach. The refrigerator, usually stocked with my son's favorite foods, was almost bare. Another sign of my fading presence in their lives. They don't even need me anymore, I said aloud, the words catching in my throat. I had devoted my life to my son, nurturing him, supporting him. And now this, a hollow shell of a home, echoing with the ghosts of memories. I moved through the house, touching familiar objects, each one a reminder of happier times. The antique clock in the hallway, a gift from my late husband, ticked steadily onward, oblivious to the ache in my chest. I stopped in front of his study, the door slightly ajar. I hadn't been in there since he passed. It felt wrong, somehow, to disturb his space. But an inexplicable pull drew me inside. The room was just as he had left it. Books lining the shelves, his favorite armchair worn smooth with age, the faint scent of pipe tobacco still lingering in the air. I sat at his desk, running my hand over the smooth wood. A small locked box caught my eye. I hadn't noticed it before. Curiosity gnawing at me, I searched for the key, eventually finding it tucked away in a hidden compartment. Inside the box, nestled amongst old letters and photographs, was a stack of documents. I unfolded the top one, my eyes widening in surprise. It was a deed to a property I'd never heard of. Beneath it, more documents, more properties, investment accounts, even a controlling interest in a small startup company. My breath hitched. This was a fortune, a secret fortune my husband had carefully hidden away. I spent the next few hours poring over the documents, my initial shock slowly giving way to a simmering sense of understanding. He had always been a shrewd investor, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. He'd never mentioned it, never hinted at its existence. Why? The question echoed in my mind, unanswered. My fingers traced the name of the startup company listed on one of the documents, Innovate Designs. The name sounded vaguely familiar. Then it hit me. Wasn't that Jessica's company? The one she'd been so secretive about? The one she'd claimed was taking off? A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. Had my husband invested in her company without my knowledge? Or was there something more sinister at play? A new feeling began to stir within me. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just sadness or loneliness. It was resolve, a quiet determination that began to blossom in the emptiness I had been feeling. The photograph of Jessica and Julian, their carefree smiles mocking me from the mantelpiece, suddenly seemed less triumphant, less secure. I closed the box, the weight of its contents heavy in my hands. The silence of the house no longer felt oppressive. It felt expectant, like the calm before a storm. I picked up the phone, dialing the number of an old friend, a lawyer I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hello, Charles," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need your help." A small smile played on my lips. The game, I realized, was just beginning, and this time, I was going to play it my way. Rain lashed against the window panes, mirroring the storm inside me. December 29th, 2 days before New Year's, 2 days before the world celebrated new beginnings, and I sat here, utterly alone. The echo of Jessica's words, "You wouldn't enjoy it, Mom," ringing in my ears. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Stephen, my son. "Wish you were here, Mom. Jessica planned an amazing beach bonfire tonight. Julian is teaching Eleanor how to surf. Weather's perfect. Each word was a tiny, sharp jab, a reminder of my exclusion. Attached was a photo. Jessica, radiant in a white sundress, Julian with his arm round her, and my granddaughter Eleanor, her small hand clasped in his, giggling, all bathed in the golden glow of the Bahamian sunset. They looked so happy, so complete, a perfect family portrait. A family portrait I wasn't a part of. I set the phone down, the image seared into my mind. My chest ached with a loneliness so profound, it felt like a physical weight. I poured myself a cup of tea, the familiar chamomile scent doing little to soothe my nerves. I wandered through the silent house, the emptiness amplifying my isolation. This house, filled with memories of happier times, now felt like a mausoleum. Christmas decorations still twinkled merrily, a cruel mockery of my current state. I stopped in front of a framed photo of my late husband, Richard. His kind eyes seemed to look right through me. "Oh, Richard," I whispered, "what have I become? Invisible, forgotten." I remembered New Year's Eve last year. The entire family gathered around our fireplace, laughing, sharing stories. Richard, always the life of the party, had raised his glass and toasted to family. Forever, forever, how quickly forever had turned into not even a week in the Bahamas. A sob caught in my throat. I picked up the photo, tracing the outline of Richard's face. He had always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. He'd seen my strength, my resilience. He'd often said, "Margaret, you are a force to be reckoned with. Never forget that." His words sparked a flicker of something within me. Not anger, not yet, but a quiet resolve. I was not invisible. I was not forgotten. I had simply been underestimated. Richard had always trusted my judgment, relied on my intuition. He'd shared everything with me. His hopes, his fears, his secrets. A strange thought flitted across my mind, a thought about the offshore account he'd mentioned, the one he'd set up years ago for a rainy day. He'd never told me the details, dismissing it with a wink and a, "Don't you worry your pretty little head about that, darling." But he had left me the key, hadn't he? The key to everything. My heart began to pound. I went to the study, the room where Richard had spent countless hours working. I opened his desk drawer, the familiar scent of cedar and old paper filling my nostrils. Beneath a stack of legal documents, I found it. A small, unassuming key. It looked ordinary, yet it held the potential to change everything. Attached was a note, in Richard's handwriting, for my Margaret. In case of emergencies, an emergency. Wasn't this an emergency, being erased from my own family, treated like an inconvenience, discarded like yesterday's news? Yes, I decided. This was definitely an emergency. With trembling hands, I retrieved the small metal box from the back of the closet, the one Richard had always kept locked. I inserted the key, the lock clicking open with a satisfying sound. Inside, nestled amongst old photographs and letters, was a single document, a bank statement. My breath caught in my throat. The number staring back at me was astronomical, far beyond anything I could have imagined. Richard's rainy day fund. Suddenly, Jessica's dismissive words, "You wouldn't enjoy it, Mom," took on a whole new meaning. They weren't about my enjoyment at all. They were about control, about keeping me in the dark. about ensuring I remain dependent, irrelevant. But not anymore. The storm raging outside seemed to quiet, replaced by a strange calm that settled over me. I felt a shift within myself, a sense of purpose, of power, that I hadn't felt in years. The faint outline of a plan began to form in my mind, nebulous, yet potent. It was time to remind Jessica, and everyone else, that Margaret, Richard's Margaret, was not someone to be trifled with. I picked up the phone and dialed a number. "Hello, David. It's Margaret. I need your help. I need to talk to you about an investment opportunity, rather significant one." The lawyer on the other end of the line cleared his throat. "Of course, Margaret. I'm always happy to hear from you. What did you have in mind?" I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile. The game, I realized, was just beginning, and I had a feeling I was about to play it very well. Rain lashed against the windows of my empty house, mimicking the storm brewing inside me. December 29th. 2 days until New Year's, and 2 days since I last spoke to my son, Daniel. 2 days since Jessica, his wife, chirped, "Oh, Mom, you wouldn't enjoy the Bahamas. It's more of a couple's trip. You know." That sting, that casual dismissal, still burned. I picked up the tablet, the screen reflecting my hollow face. Jessica's company, Glow Up Cosmetics, had been my late husband's silent investment, a fact she was blissfully unaware of. Thanks to Richard's meticulous record-keeping and a few discreet calls to his lawyer, I now held a controlling stake. My fingers traced the cool glass, a chilling resolve hardening within me. It was time to see just how glowed up Jessica's finances really were. I navigated to the company portal, logging in with the credentials the lawyer had provided. Rows of figures and spreadsheets filled the screen, a language I'd become fluent in during my years managing Richard's affairs. He always said knowledge is power. I murmured to the empty room, a faint smile touching my lips. The first irregularity jumped out almost immediately, a significant sum transferred to an offshore account, labeled vaguely as consulting fees. I raised an eyebrow. Consulting who exactly? I opened a new tab, my fingers flying across the keyboard, searching for the name attached to the account. Nothing. Another dead end. "You're being too clever, Jessica," I muttered, a thrill of the hunt coursing through me. I poured myself a cup of tea, the warmth doing little to soothe the icy knot in my stomach. This wasn't just about the Bahamas trip anymore. This was about respect, about family, about the legacy Richard had worked so hard to build. Jessica, with her perfectly manicured nails and designer sunglasses, had treated me like a relic, an inconvenience. "You'll see, Jessica," I whispered, the fire in my belly growing hotter. "You'll see just how inconvenient I can be." I returned to the spreadsheets, digging deeper, cross-referencing invoices, scrutinizing every transaction. Ours blurred into a relentless pursuit, the rain outside intensifying, mirroring my own growing sense of purpose. Then, buried deep within a quarterly report, I found it. A recurring payment to a luxury car dealership under the name Julian Bellwether. Julian, Jessica's fiancé. The same Julian who, according to Jessica, was struggling with his startup and needed a little help from his future in-laws. Help that, conveniently, never seemed to find its way back to us. I clicked on the link, my heart pounding in my chest, pulling up the details of the purchase. A sleek, metallic gray Aston Martin, a struggling startup, indeed. I said aloud, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. The image of Julian, grinning from ear to ear in his new sports car, flashed before my eyes. The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated audacity of it all. I leaned back in my chair, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. The offshore account, the consulting fees, the extravagant lifestyle, it was all connected. Jessica wasn't just excluding me from family vacations. She was systematically draining the company, lining her and Julian's pockets with money that wasn't theirs, money that was meant for Daniel, for their future, for the future of the family Richard and I had built together. The rain continued to batter the windows, but the storm inside me had subsided, replaced by a steely calm. I knew what I had to do. I picked up the phone, dialing the number of my lawyer. "Hello, David," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I think it's time we had a little chat about glow-up cosmetics and about Miss Jessica and her fiancé, Mr. Bellwether. I have a feeling New Year's is going to be quite interesting this year." I ended the call, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. The game, Jessica, had just begun. Rain lashed against the windows of my study, mirroring the turmoil inside me. December 30th, just 2 days before the new year, and I was sitting here alone, sifting through the remnants of my family, or what I thought was my family. It had started with that picture, the one Jessica posted from the Bahamas, the one I wasn't in. "Mom, it's just a quick trip, just us girls," Jessica had said, her voice light, almost dismissive. "You wouldn't enjoy all the hustle and bustle. Hustle and bustle. I'd raised 3 children and run a household for 40 years. A little Bahamian son was hardly going to ruffle my feathers. But seeing that photo, Jessica beaming beside my son, David, Julian smiling broadly, all of them raising glasses of something sparkling and tropical, it was a punch in the gut. Excluded, erased, like I was some inconvenient relic they'd rather forget. I told myself I wouldn't let it get to me, that I was better than petty squabbles. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and now, as the wind howled outside, it was about to blossom into something far more potent. I'd spent the last few weeks poring over David's old files, the ones he'd kept locked away in the attic. David, my sweet, trusting David, he'd always assumed the best of everyone, especially Jessica. "She's a firecracker, Mom," he used to say, his eyes sparkling with pride. "She knows what she wants." He certainly hadn't known what she really wanted, not until it was too late. A stroke, swift and merciless, had taken him just a year after their wedding. He'd left everything to Jessica, trusting her implicitly. He wouldn't have hidden anything from her, but he definitely kept certain financial matters private, things he hadn't even shared with me. Until now, I'd finally cracked the password to his encrypted drive, his birth date followed by mine. The irony wasn't lost on me. Inside, amongst meticulously organized folders, lay the truth, and it was far uglier than I could have ever imagined. The first red flag was a series of wire transfers, small amounts at first, gradually increasing over time. They were all going to the same offshore account, one not listed in any of the official company records. Jessica had so proudly presented to me after David's passing. David believed in transparency, Mom, she'd said, handing me a thick, leather-bound folder. I want you to be involved, to see how his legacy is thriving. Thriving, more like being systematically siphoned. The company, the one David had built from the ground up, was hemorrhaging money, and Jessica was the culprit. I felt a chill creep up my spine, despite the roaring fire in the hearth. This wasn't just about a vacation. This was about betrayal. Then I found the photos, not the glossy, staged kind Jessica curated for her social media. These were candid shots, grainy and hastily taken, pictures of her and Julian. But not just Julian. There was another man, someone I didn't recognize, a man with slick-back hair and a predatory smile. They were taken in various locations: a hotel lobby in Paris, a dimly lit restaurant in Rome. The dates coincided with Jessica's supposed business trips. Mom, I have to go to Milan for a conference, she told me just last month. Her voice strained. It's a huge opportunity for the company. Opportunity for whom, I wondered. My heart hammered against my ribs. The Bahamas trip hadn't been a girl's getaway. It had been a celebration of David's demise, of Jessica's freedom, of her illicit gains, and of her blatant infidelity. A wave of nausea washed over me. I closed the laptop. The images seared into my memory. The rain outside had intensified, the wind rattling the window panes like an angry spirit. I felt a strange calm descend upon me. This wasn't just about the vacation anymore. This wasn't just about the money. This was about justice. For David, for myself, for the family I thought I had. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the storm. A small, almost imperceptible smile played on my lips. Jessica thought she had won. She thought she had everything. She had no idea what was coming. She had no idea about the other files on David's drive, the ones detailing his offshore investments, the ones she'd never known existed. Investments that, thanks to a carefully worded clause in David's will, now belonged to me. Investments that would give me the leverage I needed to dismantle her carefully constructed facade, brick by brick. The new year was fast approaching. It was going to be a very happy new year indeed. For me, the last rays of the setting December 31st sun cast long shadows across my living room floor. I sat at my desk, a small mountain of paperwork piled before me. Bank statements, company records, emails, and photographs, each a piece of the puzzle I'd painstakingly assembled over the past few months. It all started with that blasted Bahamas photo. Jessica flashing a triumphant smile beside Julian, the turquoise water a mocking backdrop to my exclusion. We just thought you wouldn't enjoy the hustle and bustle. Mom, Jessica had said, her voice dripping with false concern. It's more of a couple's trip. A couple's trip that apparently involved charging lavish dinners and spa treatments to the company credit card. A company I now effectively owned. Just sign here, Mrs. Caldwell, the lawyer had said just yesterday, handing me the final document transferring the majority shares of Jessica's marketing firm to my name. My hand hadn't trembled as I signed. My late husband, bless his soul, had always been shrewd with investments, squirreling away funds I'd only recently discovered. Funds that had bought me this chance to finally level the playing field. I picked up a photo of Jessica and Julian, their faces alight with laughter as they boarded a private jet. Another business expense, no doubt. A necessary networking opportunity, Jessica had glibly explained when I'd questioned her about the exorbitant flight cost. We have to keep up appearances, Mom. Appearances. That was Jessica's specialty. Maintaining the facade of a successful businesswoman, a loving fiancée, while underneath it all the truth was far less glamorous. The bank statements told a different story, a story of creative accounting, inflated invoices, and funds siphoned into a personal account. The emails, seemingly innocent messages between Jessica and a supposed vendor, painted a clearer picture of a sweetheart deal benefiting both parties at the expense of the company. And the photos, well, those were the icing on the cake. Candid shots of Jessica and her vendor, a man who looked suspiciously like Julian's best man, enjoying romantic dinners and weekend getaways, all while charging it back to the company. I took a deep breath, the weight of the evidence heavy in my hands. They thought they could get away with it, I whispered to the empty room, a flicker of something cold and hard igniting in my chest. They thought I was just a doddering old woman, easily dismissed and forgotten. I traced the edge of a photograph of Jessica lounging by the pool, a glass of champagne in her hand. The caption on her social media post reading, "Living the dream. Your dream is about to become a nightmare. Dear," I muttered, a grim smile tugging at the corner of my lips. The clock on the mantelpiece chimed, announcing the final hour of the year, New Year's Eve. A time for celebration, for new beginnings. Ironic, considering what I had planned. The phone rang, shattering the silence. It was Jessica. "Happy New Year, Mom," she chirped, her voice artificially sweet. "Just calling to wish you well." "Happy New Year, Jessica," I replied, my voice calm and steady. "Are you and Julian having a nice evening?" "Wonderful," she gushed. "We're at a New Year's Eve gala. It's absolutely fabulous. So many important people here. Networking, you know." I could almost picture her, dressed to the nines, flitting through the crowd, charming potential clients, all the while oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon. "That sounds lovely, dear," I said, a hint of steel creeping into my voice. "Make sure you enjoy it. It might be the last lavish party you attend for a while." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "What do you mean by that, Mom?" Jessica asked, a slight edge of suspicion in her voice. "Oh, nothing, dear," I replied smoothly. "Just a premonition. Happy New Year." I hung up before she could respond, a slow smile spreading across my face. The evidence was neatly organized, the legal documents in order, and the clock was ticking. Tomorrow, the fireworks would begin. Tomorrow, Jessica and Julian's carefully constructed world would come crashing down around them. Tomorrow, they would learn the true meaning of the phrase Happy New Year, and I, the forgotten grandmother, the one they thought they could so easily dismiss, would be there to witness it all. The company, their luxurious lifestyle, their carefully crafted image, it would all be mine. A new year, a new beginning, indeed. The clock on the mantelpiece chimed, announcing the final hour of the year, December 31st. Another New Year's Eve spent alone, while Jessica and Julian celebrated in the Bahamas, a trip I was pointedly excluded from. "Mom," It's just not a good time, Jessica had said, her tone dismissive. Maybe next year. I sipped my tea, the warmth doing little to dispel the chill that had settled in my bones since seeing that picture of them beaming on the beach. A family photo that didn't include me. I glanced at the laptop on my desk, the screen displaying the finalized documents. Richard, my late husband, had always been shrewd with his investments, tucking away funds I'd known nothing about. Discovering those accounts, his quiet legacy, had felt like finding a lifeline. Now, that lifeline had become a weapon. I'd spent weeks poring over financial reports, untangling the web of Jessica's business dealings. My son, bless his heart, was oblivious. He trusted Jessica implicitly. She's so driven, Mom, he'd told me proudly. Building her own empire built on sand. I now knew. She'd been siphoning funds, using company resources for personal gain. Julian was in on it too, enjoying the fruits of her deception. The Bahamas trip was just one extravagant example. They'd thought they were untouchable. They'd thought I was just a doddering old woman, left behind, out of sight and out of mind. But I hadn't been idle. With Richard's hidden assets, I'd quietly acquired a controlling stake in Jessica's company. The paperwork was complete, the transfer finalized. Now, I owned it all. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd excluded me from their little celebration, so focused on their manufactured happiness they hadn't seen me coming. They'd been so busy building their castle on a foundation of lies that they'd failed to notice the shifting sands beneath their feet. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Happy New Year, Mom. Wish you were here. Having a blast." The message was accompanied by another picture: Jessica and Julian, champagne flutes raised, fireworks exploding in the background. The forced gaiety in their smiles was almost comical. I imagined them, oblivious, toasting to their success, to their stolen wealth, to their carefully constructed illusion of a perfect life. I typed a simple reply: "Happy New Year to you both." I didn't need to add anything more. The real fireworks were yet to come. I closed my laptop, a slow smile spreading across my face. The champagne I had chilling in the fridge suddenly felt much more appealing. This New Year's Eve might be quiet, but it was far from lonely. It was filled with a sense of purpose, a quiet satisfaction that ran deeper than any beach party or celebratory toast. They thought they had won. They thought they had it all. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The new year was just beginning, and so was my plan. Tomorrow, the real celebration would start. Tomorrow, they would learn what happens when you underestimate a grandmother. Tomorrow, the empire they built on deceit would crumble. I raised my glass of champagne to the silent room, to the memory of Richard, and to the sweet taste of revenge that was just around the corner. The clock struck midnight, and I took my first sip, the bubbles dancing on my tongue, a prelude to the storm that was about to break. The crisp air of January 2nd bit at my cheeks as I stepped into Brennan and Associates. The holiday decorations still clung to the walls, a stark contrast to the icy dread that permeated the atmosphere. "Margaret, so glad you could make it, Mr. Henderson." The auditor greeted me with a strained smile. "Shall we get started?" he asked, gesturing towards the conference room. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. despite the tremor of anticipation running through me. Let's begin. Inside, Jessica and Julian sat stiffly at the mahogany table, their festive chair from the Bahamas photos a distant memory. Julian's usual swagger was replaced with a nervous fidgeting, while Jessica's carefully constructed composure seemed to crack with every glance in my direction. "Margaret," Jessica began, her voice tight. "I'm still not sure why this is necessary. It's standard procedure." "Jessica," Mr. Henderson interjected, opening his briefcase, especially given the recent discrepancies. He gave me a knowing look, and I allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible nod. He began by outlining the scope of the audit, focusing on the last quarter's financials. As he spoke, I observed Jessica and Julian exchange increasingly anxious glances. "Now, Mr. Henderson continued, let's delve into these marketing expenses. Specifically, the substantial payments made to Island Breeze Consulting." Jessica stiffened. "Island Breeze," she echoed, a little too innocently. "That's a new marketing initiative." "Indeed," Mr. Henderson replied, his tone neutral. "Perhaps you can explain why the registered address for Island Breeze Consulting is a beachfront villa in the Bahamas." Jessica paled. Julian cleared his throat. "There must be some mistake," he stammered. "An oversight, surely." Mr. Henderson, however, was relentless. He presented bank statements, invoices, and even social media posts, meticulously documenting the flow of funds from Brennan and Associates to Island Breeze Consulting, and then to personal accounts held by Jessica and Julian. Photos of them lounging by the pool, sipping cocktails, and enjoying lavish dinners, all time-stamped during supposed business trips, flashed on the projector screen. "I believe," Mr. Henderson said, his voice now edged with steel, "these constitute clear evidence of misappropriation of company funds." Jessica's carefully crafted facade finally crumbled. "It wasn't like that," she burst out, her voice shrill. "It was an investment. We were expanding the business into beachfront villas and luxury vacations." Mr. Henderson raised an eyebrow. Julian remained silent, his face ashen. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the culmination of weeks of careful planning, of painstakingly gathering evidence, of quietly enduring their condescending remarks and blatant disregard. I took a deep breath, my voice calm and steady. "Jessica," I said, meeting her gaze directly, "I believe it's time we discuss the true ownership of Brennan and Associates." Confusion flickered across her face. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "This company belongs to Julian and me." I produced a document, a share certificate bearing my name, and a surprisingly large percentage of ownership. "This," I stated, holding it up for all to see, "represents the controlling stake in Brennan and Associates, acquired through a recent investment made by myself." Jessica stared at the document, her eyes wide with disbelief. How is this possible?" she stammered. You were supposed to be," she trailed off, unable to articulate the words out of the picture. The phrase she and Julian had used so carelessly just weeks before. "I believe," I continued, my voice unwavering, "that as the majority shareholder, I have the authority to make certain changes." I turned to Mr. Henderson. "I would like to formally request the immediate removal of Jessica and Julian from their positions within the company, pending a full investigation into their financial activities. Mr. Henderson, a flicker of something akin to admiration in his eyes, nodded. Certainly, Mrs. Brennan. I'll begin drafting the necessary paperwork immediately. He turned to Jessica and Julian, his tone brisk and professional. I'm afraid you'll need to vacate the premises. Security will escort you out. As they were led away, their faces a mixture of shock and humiliation. I allowed myself a small, private smile. The Bahamas trip, the condescending remarks, the exclusion from family gatherings, it all seemed so distant now. The company, my late husband's legacy, was safe. And as for Jessica and Julian, well, they had a New Year's vacation they wouldn't soon forget. The chill of January seemed to dissipate, replaced by a warmth that spread through me, a warmth that had nothing to do with the tropical sun, and everything to do with justice served. The fight wasn't over, not yet. But I had won this battle, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I would win the war. The New Year's Eve fireworks burst over the city, a dazzling display of color against the inky sky. It was a stark contrast to the muted, gray conference room where I sat, across from Jessica and Julian, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Jessica, I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. I believe we need to discuss the future direction of Stellar Designs. Jessica shifted uncomfortably in her chair. What do you mean, Margaret? She asked, her voice tight. We've been doing just fine. Julian, ever the supportive fiancé, placed a reassuring hand on her arm. Yes, Mother, he added, his tone condescending, the same tone he used when they announced their Bahamas trip, a trip I was pointedly not invited to. Stellar Designs is thriving. We don't really need your input. That's where you're mistaken, I said, placing a thick folder on the table between us. It landed with a weighty thud that mirrored the sinking feeling in Jessica's stomach. I imagined this, I continued, sliding the folder towards them, contains documentation of certain irregularities in the company's finances. Jessica's eyes darted to the folder, her face paling. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, her hand trembling as she reached for the folder. Julian, however, snatched it first, his brow furrowed as he flipped through the pages. His face, too, lost its color as he scanned the meticulously compiled evidence of Jessica's creative accounting. Where did you get this? He demanded, his voice barely a whisper. That's not important, I replied, my gaze fixed on Jessica. What is important is that these discrepancies are addressed. Jessica avoided my eyes, her silence a clear admission of guilt. I can explain, she finally managed, her voice barely audible. I'm sure you can, I said, my voice hardening. But I'm not interested in explanations. I'm interested in solutions. I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. As of today, I am the majority shareholder of Stellar Designs. Jessica's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. What? She gasped. How my late husband, your father-in-law, was a shrewd investor. I explained, a flicker of a smile playing on my lips. He had a knack for finding opportunities where others saw none. He also had a keen understanding of the importance of diversification, including certain offshore accounts that he never disclosed. Jessica and Julian stared at me, speechless. They clearly hadn't anticipated this. They hadn't anticipated the quiet, unassuming mother-in-law they had so easily dismissed to have such power. They hadn't factored in the years of quiet observation, the careful accumulation of knowledge and resources. They thought I was out of the picture, relegated to the sidelines. They thought they could simply erase me from their perfect little family portrait, the one taken on that sunny beach in the Bahamas, the one I wasn't invited to be in. You can't do this, Jessica sputtered, finally finding her voice. This is my company. I built this. You built it. I corrected, with funds that were improperly allocated. Funds that, as of this moment, are under my control. I reached into my bag and produced a document, sliding it across the table. This is a resignation letter. I suggest you both sign it. Julian looked from the resignation letter to Jessica, his face a mask of confusion and anger. Jessica, he began, but she cut him off. Don't, Julian, she said, her voice flat. She picked up the pen and signed the letter with a shaky hand. Julian hesitated for a moment longer, then followed suit. I gathered the signed letters and stood up, my gaze sweeping over the two of them. The new CEO will be in touch, I said, my voice calm and steady. I trust you'll cooperate fully during the transition. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. Oh, and Jessica, I added, turning back to face her, enjoy the rest of your New Year's Eve. I believe there's a spectacular fireworks display happening outside. It would be a shame to miss it. I walked out of the conference room, leaving Jessica and Julian sitting in stunned silence amidst the wreckage of their carefully constructed world. As the elevator doors closed, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. The fireworks outside were indeed spectacular, but they paled in comparison to the fireworks I had just set off. The Bahamas trip, the condescending remarks, the exclusion, it all seemed so distant now, a fading memory replaced by the sweet taste of justice. And as I stepped out into the crisp night air, I knew this was just the beginning. The assets my husband had so carefully hidden away, the assets they thought they would never find, were more than just money. They were a legacy, a testament to his foresight, and a tool for ensuring that his family, including his sometimes overlooked wife, was always taken care of. And tonight, that legacy had secured more than just financial stability. It had secured my place, my voice, and my power.